New developments now on the financial trouble for a major local development company. Today, Epic Companies announced in an email to several tenants, effective immediately, Buckholes Properties will be taking over management of the Don apartment buildings in South Fargo. Other Fargo-based media outlets have reported that Personal Touch Property Management has taken over some of Epic's other properties, including Block E in Moorhead. This announcement today comes several weeks after anonymous whistleblowers reported that Epic Companies had laid off dozens of employees, and area contractors had told us here at Valley News Live Epic hadn't paid them for the work they'd done. Now tomorrow, the board of directors for Norsk Husfest, which Epic has managed in the past, will be meeting to talk about specifics of this year's event in Minot.
Epic still has not publicly said anything about their struggles or these recent transitions.